Well, welcome back, everyone. Today I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Jared Longshore. Thank you for joining me.
I'm very glad to join you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, quick introduction on you. You have a BA in Education, MA in Divinity, and PhD in Biblical Spirituality.
That's right. That's me.
And then you've authored multiple books, including Wisdom for Kings and Queens and The Case for the Christian Family.
Yeah, that's right.
You're the Associate Dean currently and Fellow of Theology at New St. Andrews College here in Moscow, Idaho, and a Associate Pastor at Christ Church, also here.
That's right. That's right. I think the official title at NSA is undergraduate dean. So we don't have an associate dean, but
Okay.
undergraduate just means the students who come to college that are not in the master's program.
There you go. So we'll jump right into it. And the first thing I'd love to talk about is emotions. It's kind of been a buzzword recently, and there seems to be a couple different takes on how to correctly approach your emotions. So there's, on the one hand, there's the stoic David Goggins, ignore them, kill them,
Let's
bury
get Roman.
them.
Let's get Roman.
Right. Let's bury them as deep as we can so that any emotion you have is instantly dead, so that it's, in order that you have the only emotions you have are conducive to success, right? And generally success in physical exercise and sometimes in mental exercise as well. And then on the other side, there's kind of the let your emotions run wild. And we see that with a lot of actors, celebrities, singers, songwriters,
I just
etc.
need to express myself.
Yes. What is the correct Christian approach to your emotions?
Okay, this is a really good question, actually, and I just want to highlight the context again, just so you can see how pertinent this question is. Carl Trueman wrote a book called The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, which I probably have over there behind you somewhere. An excellent book in which he basically starts with saying, if I were to tell my grandfather that I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, he would just respond with a horse laugh. He wouldn't know what else to do.
Right.
And Truman says, but we don't do that. Moderns don't do that. And we don't do that for a significant reason, not simply because we like political correctness and we're afraid to laugh at that kind of thing. That's true too. But we don't laugh because we have the same presuppositions as the transgender movement, which is the real me is the internal me. And if I am to be human, if I am to be a self, have to express my inner self to you, and you have to acknowledge it. That's the
Right.
way. Even if I'm not trans, I can be a conservative in America, and I can still think this is the hallmark of humanity. Okay. And then somebody might say, isn't that what you're even doing on this podcast? Didn't you start this podcast because you're a modern self and you want to express your ideas? You want me to recognize your ideas and like and click and share? Well, no, but I could see how you would, you could see how that kind of thing is going. There actually are podcasts that just want to do that. That's a massive problem. All of this emoting, and it's evident in like music. It's evident in every sphere. And what's happened over the last really probably, and it could be 2 years. There has been a massive reaction to that, particularly from the males that are like, no, we're going stoic. We're going Roman. We're going
Complete 180.
We're going weight room, baby.
Yeah.
Like, except they snuck in a little bit of this emoting with all of the posts of themselves lifting online and calling each other kings and whatnot, slapping each other's behinds, and you know what I mean. I play baseball, so slapping the butt in baseball is perfectly contextual. But it's but don't be playing don't be grabbing things in the weight room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. So, but to the point, there is something in this new masculinity that I want to harness. Okay, so let me add a side note. If anyone writes in the comments, if any of the bros in the weight room going to get on me for getting on them, I just say, man up. I'm with you. I want to harness something, but there is a stoicism that pursuit of greatness, discipline that is really, really good, but is also missing something about the Christian vision of what it means to actually be a human and rightly understand the emotional life. So your question is a good one, an important one. And probably the best way I know to answer it is to go kind of deep dive theological for a second. So I'm answering your question, but our confession, Westminster Confession of Faith, says that God doesn't have a body. He is without parts, and he is without passions. It's interesting. He says he's without passions. Now you look at the Bible, and it says, well, God was wroth. He had wrath. Isn't that a passion? Well, no, it's not. The idea of a passion is that God would go from one state of emotionlessness and be moved to a state of emotion, right?
Got it.
He would be moved. So he was not wroth, and then something happened and he became wroth. And that's actually not the way it works. God is wrath. God is love. He is these things. And we do things down here that bring us into relation to that wrath, right?
Right.
Or in relation to that favor. Okay? So God is. He says, I am. Okay? We humans, we have passions. Like it or not, we have passions. Okay? Now, we don't like the first group that has so many passions that they're just emoting everywhere. But what's sneaking in the other group, the Stoicism group, is they want to not only be like God, they want to be God. I want to be unmoved in any shape or form because I am.
Right.
And I want to tell them, no, you're not. Let's be honest. Be honest. You are moved from one state of emotion to another state of emotion. You have to be honest about that. And now let's harness what you're wanting to be after. There is a way. We are to be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. And that's exactly what we ought to be, but we have to be honest about it. The only way you're going to get the stability of your emotional life is through faith. You have to participate in God's immovability to be immovable. You actually have to trust him. So there's a humility that sneaks in. You see, there's a humility that knows I am one who can be moved. Say a new husband can be emotionally moved and emotionally manipulated by a wife that is in an emotional fit. She's in an emotional fit, and what happens to him, right? And then the guys that know they don't want to do that become stoic, and they become more like a rock than a human, okay? You should be like a rock, but you shouldn't be a rock, okay? You should be like a rock. You shouldn't be a rock. And the way you're going to do that is by trusting the Lord, being stable, understanding, being sympathetic to your wife, who is the weaker vessel. Okay, she is more easily moved emotionally than you are. Okay, understand that. Even in the moment of someone coming at you and those things start to rise up, you trust the Lord and you say, no, God will be good to us, whatever's going on here. If I need to be sanctified, you need to be sanctified. But that is emotional stability. And therefore, you can actually still love. So the rock can't love. And that's exactly what the wife needs.
Right.
She needs love. Stable, steadfast, love, favor, stable, steadfast, hatred of evil, right? I don't hate evil in the way that people hate it on Twitter, which is something happens that's wicked, and the conservatives set their hair on fire. I am so deeply, either I am so deeply grieved, I am so deeply, look through Twitter, scroll through Twitter sometime, and see how often people are tweeting their emotional life.
Right.
Even in a good way, And I mean, I've had to do this times. I am so, just shut up. Nobody cares about, nobody cares. Stop talking about how you feel and talk about the thing. This is wicked, right?
Right.
We stand against this. This problem must be solved. That's great. And it's not always wrong for you to express your emotions, not always for you to identify that, but you have to regulate it, that kind of thing. So I think the hallmark of emotional stability is faith in God. That's how you actually you participate in his immovability without trying to pretend that you are him, that you can somehow not be moved emotionally without God. If you do that, you're going to be this dead thing, right? That might be hard and it might be unmoved, but it's not full of life. Right? It doesn't have, you're trying to be emotionless entirely, and that's not the goal. So very good job trying to correct it, guys, that are like the new conservative movements and all of that. but it's going to have to be by faith in the Lord.
And it is different for men and women, correct?
Very different for men and women. Yeah. One of my favorite lines is, I think it's 1 Peter 3, and this is the English Standard Version of the text. It doesn't appear in some of the other, but the language is, these holy women of old who hoped in God and didn't fear what was frightening, which I love. So there are objective, frightening things in the world. This is like a side note for those who are raising small kids. When the kids are worried about monsters in the closet, don't lie to them and tell them there are no monsters in the closet. One of my favorite things to do is like, oh yeah, they're big. They are
Right.
nasty. The kids, but they're under God's jurisdiction.
Right.
Okay. And God has promised to guard you, right? With his angels on the right hand and on the left, he will protect you. And therefore the kid's going, is being conditioned to understand the world as it really is, and to understand what faith is. This is how you will not be moved by the scary thing, by faith. So sometimes I've done this in premarital counseling. You have, two 21-year-olds sitting in your office, and I just look to the girl and go, I mean, this is a crazy thing you're about to do, right? And they kind of smirk, and I say, because you have your dad, and you might not have agreed with every decision your dad made, but, at least he's like 45. You know what I mean? He's seen you're about to hitch your wagon to this 21-year-old numbskull. I mean, he doesn't know anything. Where's he about to take you? My goodness. How can you possibly even do this crazy thing? And I'm just teeing them up for the ideas. You will do it as you hope in God, as you trust the Lord. Okay? You're going to have these moments where there are going to be scary things, and they're going to affect you at a deeper level emotionally than they do your husband. And for you too, the same principle holds true. But being mindful of that, just men and women and the way they're created, men are less moved by things physically. All right? They're going to be less moved by the wind. Men are categorically, definitionally stronger than women, generally speaking. There's always particulars you could bring up, an old man, a man that has some kind of injury, whatever,
Yep.
Particularly strong women. There's different constitutions even within the sexes. So certain men have that quality to a greater degree than other men. Certain women have this kind of immovable quality more than other women. But women have it categorically there. So being mindful emotionally, spiritually more sensitive to things, physically more sensitive to things. If you know that about the world, you're going to operate better when it comes to dealing with the sexes.
Right. And the idea is that God is accessing all of the emotions at once, and we can only access one. Correct? And so when you're in a situation where emotions are necessary or they arise, the idea is that you are trying to figure out what emotion would God access in this time, or am I missing that?
Yeah, it's something close to that. It's like God simply is those things.
Right.
We are not experiencing wrath at the moment, but we could if something were to happen. So the key is that we are moved to them. Whether we only experience one of them, I think we definitely experience many of them, and sometimes we don't even know what's going on, right? But we can have anger and sadness at the same time. So it's not. I wouldn't go to just a particular, like identifying which one I should feel, but by faith, I'm going to operate within those emotions appropriately. And apart from faith, whatever it is that I'm being moved to by the situation, apart from faith, I'm going to have them spiral and lead me. The emotion shouldn't be leading me, right? Faith should be leading me. Truth should be leading me. Emotions are these secondary factors that come along that I tell what to do. Right? So my reason is functioning, my faith is functioning, the truth primarily is functioning, where I'm laying hold of that truth. And then if I know that there's going to be emotion that wants to push me, it wants to boss me around. And the key is, no, you boss it around, you don't let it boss you around.
And there are times where it is correct to be stoic about a situation, and there are also times where it's right not to be.
Yeah,
correct.
The stoicism thing, the way the stoicism thing is playing so well is when the leftist, crazy, woke, nonsense lady is accusing you of being a racist and everything else, homophobic and misogynist. For you to just stand there and smirk, and be like, yeah, it's great. Rory did this so well. I mean, Rory can become an internet phenomenon when he
Yes.
stood in front of all these people. He had stoicism so well. I joke that I watched the clip and I saw him smirk one time, and I don't even think he wanted to. I just think it kind of peaked up, but he kind of knew. Like he was even intentionally like not smirking. The guys that smirk are trying to send a message.
Oh yeah.
Rory was genius because he was perfectly stoic. Like it just looked like faithfulness. It was just there. And I saw this little smirk come out, and it kind of felt like he tucked it back away because he did a great job. Just you should respond that way when you know people are like just being absolutely crazy to you. That's a perfect time
When
to
their
do it.
emotions, it's not going to help anything for you to also be emotional.
Absolutely.
Right. That's the time when you need to be like a rock.
You are simply not bowing down to their gods. Psalm
Right.
16, I'm not going to offer those sacrifices of blood. I'm not pouring out those drink offerings. You're all worshiping at the idol of your emotional life right now, and I am showing you by my emotionlessness that I'm not offering to that pagan
I'm not playing
god.
that game.
Right.
Yeah. So where did that emotional focus come from? Where everyone's so intently thinking about all their emotions, and as opposed to what's actually true. Should we be thinking about our emotions as much as we do right now?
Well, in one sense, we should be thinking about them because they have now like been turned into full-fledged idols, and just the historical interest of like, how did we get here? Like, this is not just people have always been caught by their emotions, but we're dealing with a particular manifestation of my inner emotional life has to be expressed for me. People are just nuts. So I think trying to come up with categories that can actually help people to deal with it. I've done this with counseling too. If somebody's dealing with anxiety, okay, is that an emotion? Well, yeah. I mean, in one sense, that's what it is. But the temptation for them is to think, I need to delve deeply into understanding my emotional life. Why am I like this? How can I enter into myself and do emotional surgery on myself to fix myself, to not be so anxious, to not be so depressed, whatever it might be. And we think all of our problems are inside of us. Many of our problems are inside of us. But sometimes I go, well, you're a Christian, so you believe in principalities and powers. Okay. Now, I believe those principalities and powers were triumphed over by Christ at the cross, but they're still around. And I say, maybe you have a principality anxiety standing next to you, hounding you.
Right.
And all of a sudden they're like, You mean I might be dealing with something that's external to me that's causing me trouble? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Your context, you might just be having trials that are being sent to you from the outside. And that seems to click, at least giving them the concept of, it's not, my whole life is not about me trying to figure out why I am this little avatar that I'm building. How do I personally fix my anxiety problems? No, you need to ask the Lord to drive away the anxiety. You need to go to someone outside of yourself. Your whole goal is not you trying to figure out your emotional entanglement.
Right.
Right.
It's a solvable problem.
It's a solvable problem, and it's not solvable by you. And it's definitely not solvable by me as a counselor. That don't trust me.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you some advice here, but if you come to me with a Rubik's cube all jumbled up, this is my emotional life, and you hand me the Rubik's cube, sometimes I just take it and throw it in the trash, and then look back at you and think, what did you do? You're supposed to help me to know the various moves I need to make. Well, yeah, there's going to be strategy and whatnot, but your chief problem is you're not trusting the Lord. Give your Rubik's cube to Jesus. Like, give it to him. When you're anxious, just pray, Lord, I'm anxious, and that's sin, and I confess it, and I hand it to you. I cast my cares upon you, and when I do, I don't take them back out of your hand. Stop praying and walk away with them. You just give them to him, confess it, and move on with your life. That's it's outside the paradigm in which everybody's working in, and that's going to help them actually get the emotional stability that they need.
Yeah, and there's also the often done by Stoic men, but the self-proposed Stoics, that the intense physical accomplishments. I'll give you an example. There was this guy that recently did the world's longest nonstop swim. I think he swam for like just over 500 kilometers, which is wildly impressive. But I think the question is that something that you should still be doing and focusing on in your 30s and 40s? And the same thing could probably be applied to UFC fighters or bodybuilders or world's strongest man competitors. Is that something that is worth pursuing?
Yeah, there's so sometimes I like to talk about misplaced virtues. Okay, so this is like a giving a gracious reading to both of the emotional problems, emoting yourself everywhere, right? And being so stoic that you can actually accomplish a lot of things. Like there's some very practical strength. So let's take the stoicism. There's a virtue in it, and you've rightly identified it. I mean, guys that can just seem to just go beyond, right? The guy that's in the stadium with all the guys banging those things while he's shooting the free throw, and he's not phased. He's got this.
Right.
That's a virtue. It's misplaced if it's the old poem Invictus, William Ernest Henley, maybe. I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul. My head is bloody but unbowed. No, that's not the way it works. What I want to say is that the Christians are the ones who actually can fully obtain that virtue and place it rightly and not have it misplaced into self-glory, into self-existence. Like I somehow possess this particular quality. So we're in this moment where we should be looking at those guys that are going to go that way and say, yeah, we get it. But we're the ones who can fully lean into that virtue. The Stoics can't. They will be broken, right? The only staying power that exists is the triune God, faith in him.
Right. And a rock can be brittle, but something like water is able to sustain for far longer.
Yeah.
Because you're putting your faith in something else. But as far as the focus, like I'm going to dedicate my life to pursuing this physical accomplishment, is that something that's worthwhile pursuing? Is it something that needs to be done, or?
Yeah, I think I think then it kind of depends on station. You can't do it in an idolatrous way. But if there's a guy, I mean, if I knew a guy that was a Christian that wanted to do the world's strongest man thing, I mean, if he's feeding the family, and he's loving his family, he loves his wife, he loves his kids, he's not stoic at all with his little girls, right?
Right.
Does your little 2-year-old have your affection? Does she know? Are you cold to her, or on the other part, are you hot and cold, flopping back and forth, emotionally manipulating her, or are you steadfast love toward her? Like, no, I rejoice over her with loud singing as the Lord rejoices over me, and I'm the world's strongest man. Right? Yeah. So you can pursue those things, but you can't pursue them in an idolatrous fashion. And you can be particular in your kind of strength. I mean, if you're going to be a guy that's going to go a long way in athletics or a long way in running cross-country miles, the key is you can't do it as an idolater.
And what would it look like for someone who is doing it idolatrously?
If it's the only thing he's doing, right? I once gamed this out with my working philosophy is that faith enhances skill. So, and Augustine talked this way to Rome. He said, Rome fell because of your pagan worship. So your demon gods corrupted you, and then you fell physically. And he says, Rome would have exercised greater dominion had they worshipped the true God. They would have been physically enhanced had they worshipped the true God. Doesn't mean that they would win every battle. Doesn't mean they would even stay around as a nation. That's not exactly what he's saying. It doesn't mean that they would extend their empire and conquer other nations. It meant they would have been stronger, right? So I think that's true. Take a guy like Michael Jordan. I've said if he would have worshipped the triune God, would he have been a better basketball player, right? And I don't know much about Jordan's actual faith or whatnot. I'm just saying, using him in an abstract fashion here. People immediately would object, look, man, if he'd have worshipped the triune God, he spent more time with his family and he spent less time shooting free throws, and he wouldn't have been as good as free throws. And there's a point there. Like, I get that. So there's going to have to be something holistic about the man. That once it's reducing to this is the only thing I do. Baseball players love to do this. Like, so I played college baseball, and I'd have guys, they do the whole Field of Dreams thing. They get out there and they're like, "Yeah, this is my sanctuary. This is my temple, my holy of holies." I'm like, don't do that.
Let's calm down here.
That's what's and I want to tell them, your baseball career is not going to be blessed if you do that. That's when you've done idolatry. So what is he like as a man? He's a whole creature. You're going to be a husband, you're going to be a father, you're going to be a son, you're a worshiper, right? There should be something of the generalist even in the guy that's a specialist. So some guys are going to be generalists, some guys are going to be specialists. I think that's okay and good. That's how God's wired the world. But if you're a generalist, you should probably be good at something. Can you point to, or are you just like this abstracted guy that can talk superficially about everything? That's a problem. The idolater problem is this is my specific thing and this is my sole focus, and you're neglecting your wife, you're neglecting your kids, you're neglecting all these other areas of life.
Yeah, there's a quote that I heard from Alex Hormozy, who I don't know if it's originally from him, but he was making the point that married men make more than single men, are more financially successful, and married men with kids are even more financially successful as a general rule than just married men or single men. And I almost wonder if that even goes farther, where married men with kids who are Christian and are living in faith are going to be more successful in their area of pursuit, whether that's financial or some other area, than just single men or married men with kids who are not Christian.
Oh, yeah. And this is related to a lot of guys that are either single or newly married are in this great quest to know what it is they're going to do with their life, and some of them struggle to figure out what it is. Like, I'm just really working on figuring out what I'm going to do when I'm 20 years down the road. What will I be? And that whole way of thinking is just dumb. I just say stop all that mess.
Yeah.
You're going to get a wife, and you're going to get a kid, and the guy that's married with a bunch of kids is going, I got to put food on the table. That's
Right.
what I got to do. And he feels that, and that drives him, and it's very good that it drives him. He's not on this personal quest of discovering his identity. he's looking outside of himself and go, where are the buffalo?
Right.
Because wherever the buffalo are, that's where I'm going to go. And that's good for society. That's good for in any organization, right? I'm not just this specialist dude that can do this one thing, and well, you don't need it anymore. The Industrial Revolution happened, and you don't need that particular skill anymore. So I'm gone. The guy that has duties, obligations, people to feed, he's always enhancing things because he's always looking at, what is it in this that this organization needs? What does this society or this city need? It needs this, so I'm going to do it. Because that's going to provide for my family, and it's going to provide for the people around me.
Right. I think Dr. Ben Markle put it well, and he said God illuminates the step right in front of you, but oftentimes not the step 80 in front of you.
Yeah.
Where you just got to make the next step and walk faithfully today.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out tomorrow when tomorrow shows up.
Yeah. The word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path, but it's not a headlight.
Right.
It's a lamp. And that really is, that goes back to the idea of faith. If you're not actually meditating on that truth, it's the truth, it's the word that's a lamp to your feet. It's not just, the sons of Issachar knew the times, and they knew what Israel ought to do. So it wasn't just the times. Like, some guys just want to know the times. And if you're going to try to game it out through mere reason, like, I have my skills of observation and reason refined such that I can see what needs to be done, that's not going to work. That's not Christian. It's, yes, all of that you're talking about. We have all of that, but then we have, Lord, should I fight that battle? David, right? God says, no, don't fight that one. Okay, good. Should I fight that battle? Yeah, fight that battle. Lord, should I fight that battle? And he goes, yeah, but this time go over in the trees and wait till you hear the sound of marching atop the balsam trees. And when you hear that, then go. He's constantly in tune with the Lord through his word, and he's getting that next step in front of him.
Yeah. So how should you handle people who are overly emotional or, on the other hand, stoic? What is the correct response?
Well, man, you got different categories. So if you got somebody that's overly emotional and they're sitting with you and be like, "Can you help me?" I'm going one way. If I'm Rory back and I've got people
Right.
just emoting in my face, then it's a whole different thing. Um, if it is that second category, that's when being stoic is the best thing to do for them. Just indicate to them that you're not moved, right? If someone's actually looking to you for help, then you want to model it for them. You want to game it out with them, like what is it that's making you anxious, that kind of thing, and then help them through the word to say like, well, why shouldn't you be? Maybe they're anxious for no apparent reason, or maybe they're anxious because they're really struggling financially. You have to acknowledge whatever it is when you find it, and then you're going to find promises, truths that are going to help them navigate that particular difficulty.
As we've talked about the rise of emotional superheroes, there's also the rise of the stoic superheroes. Why are there not Christians, it feels like, who are in the limelight trying to be that guiding North Star to so many people? It feels like all the Elon Musk, Donald Trump, the Andrew Tate, all of those people, the ones that everyone knows about, are not the ones whose lives are, in many cases, worth imitating.
Yeah. Well, this is the world that we kind of live in. You're dealing with the fall. You're dealing with swingings of back and forth. And you've got enemies on the right hand and on the left. Different nations out there surrounding Israel that are warring against themselves and then warring against Israel. So I would say that's not. That's not a recent phenomenon. What is recent about it, what seems to be so gripping, is I do think we're moving through we had the woke spasm, the woke nonsense, and because it's exacerbated, we have now the new stoic conservative right. So we're dealing with a particular manifestation of it right now, and I think the church is working on it. Like you're hearing more and more about what does emotional self-control actually mean. This fact that we're talking about is hopefully going to kind of stir it up, but it's a particular battle that the church now does need to speak to.
And the church has also been under attack very openly. Most recently, we saw with the Olympic opening ceremony, the trans/gay
Mm-hmm.
Last Supper as part of the celebration of the Olympics, which that's a question of why that was introduced in the first place. But if no one would do that if they were Muslim, right? No one would mock the Muslims like they mocked the Christians. So is there a place where Christians need to like physically stop and in the same way that you would discipline a child for doing something wrong? Do you discipline, hey, no, that's not okay. You have crossed a line and we will physically stop you from doing something like that?
Oh, absolutely. The the Olympics are very interesting, particularly with what Augustine says in the City of God. I mentioned to you that in the City of God, the reason Augustine wrote that book is because Rome fell. About 410, Alaric the Barbarian comes in, and waylays Rome. People flee Rome and they come to North Africa, which was still kind of very much within that Roman era empire
Right.
identifications. And their claim was Christianity made us weak. So you had Constantine about a century before, and then Theodosius after him, that made Christianity the religion of the empire. And then only a few decades later, Rome falls to barbarians. So what's the charge? Charge is that Christianity made us weak, and so we fell. If we continued to worship our demon gods, Jupiter and all of these others, then we would have stayed. And Augustine meets them right at that front and says, it's not Christianity's fault that you fell. It's your demon gods that caused you to fall. And he actually goes into detail. They would have plays. Okay. And in those plays, the Romans would depict their gods doing immoral things. And they said their gods were pleased with that. Their gods were pleased with being depicted doing immoral things in the plays. And they were corrupting the people to act like they're corrupt gods. And Augustine just goes, yeah, you're right, because they're demon gods. So your demon gods were very pleased to be depicted doing what they do, and they corrupted your own society through the plays themselves. These plays were actual realities in which the demon gods were kind of governing over, and you had these mediating priests, the actors, that were training the people and how they were to live. Okay, so if you go, is that true? I think Augustine's right. I don't think Augustine's crazy. I think he's right. And if that's right, look at the Paris Olympics. Now, interestingly, in the Roman era, they'd have the plays, and beside them, they'd have gladiatorial games. These were festivals, right?
Yeah.
They were religious festivals in which you're doing all this. What are the Olympics? They sure look. I mean, thank goodness they're not quite at the gladiatorial game level.
Yes.
But you can't keep that stuff in the opening ceremony. So I noticed that I don't know if it was a pole vaulter or somebody that like won a competition, and then it was a girl, and she starts like crumping like when she wins. I'm like, what in the world? Like you're not just going to keep that stuff at the opening ceremony.
Right.
The false gods are not going to be pleased with just having the opening ceremony. They want the whole thing. And Christians need to look at that and go, that's what's going on. Like, this really is demonic. This really is evil. And it's not just humans doing naughty things. It's, Scripture tells us, see that you're not taken captive by the devil to do his will. So human beings can be taken captive to do corrupt things that actually you have fallen celestial beings behind that kind of thing, corrupting nations such that they're going to fall.
Right.
So the Christian response has to be holistic, right? Is there going to be physical resistance of these kinds of things? Yes. Is there going to be spiritual resistance of these kinds of things? Yes. Do Christians need to know it's not merely physical? Yes. They have to have that category. They basically need to know the heaven and earth realities that are going on, and the response is going to have to be a heavenly and earthly response.
And what does that look like as far as like where do you draw the line as far as this is when we will physically stop you from doing that again?
Well, in one sense, we need to physically stop them all the time. So anybody that is involved in kind of legal restructure, all the Christians out there that are working on family law and policy are providing civil enforcements, right? That are physically restraining people from doing that kind of activity. We need to be doing that. Overturning the Burgerfell is key, crucial, has to be done. There's absolutely no way for us to operate as a society in a healthy way and not go down into Sheol apart from fixing that, which is going to be a physical limitation resulting in tax credits and how the family's structured and who children belong to. So I think it's already both of those. Most people are always saying, when do we physically resist with guns? But what I want to say is, look, that time certainly always it comes in every nation, but don't think that's your only physical response, right? Education has a very practical, like, we're raising up people to actually think in an appropriate biblical way, and they're going to be starting businesses. When you start a business, you become influential in your town. Those kinds of resources cause very physical, practical, political influence in a society. So when you're going to work and you're growing your business, you're standing against that kind of thing. Should certain businesses be taken out because they are corrupt? Right? And they're not just a business that's selling you shirts. They're a business that's selling you shirts with the rainbow flag, with pedagogical instruction to the next generation of how you should live.
Shirts and lies.
Absolutely. You should be, I'm going to say, you should be mindful of that entity, and there should be men that have business know-how that are actually structuring to get those particular entities out of your society, so they're no longer having the impact that they're having. So I'm kind of a sensus plenior holistic understanding of the connection between the prayer closet, worship on the Lord's Day that's central to it all, and then the dominion that we're exercising in society. The problems come when we detach dominion from worship. That's the key, and people are kind of they toggle back and forth between them, or they view them in a dichotomous way, which is not to say they are distinct. right? There's a distinction between your worship and your dominion, a distinction between when you're praying and when you're growing your business or when you're establishing righteous laws in the land. But that distinction is not a dichotomy. It's not a great separation. Don't live that way where you think, I have to choose. You have your prayer, but deeds, not words for me, right?
Right.
There's that kind of thing. And then there's the other people on the other side that go, this world is not our home. This stuff you're talking about, physical enforcements and mechanisms that are going to be external. I don't do any of that. I just pray. I think both of those parties are wrong. You need your worship and dominion at the same time.
Right. You need soft and hard power. And we're not saying that if you burn a Bible, the Christians are going to come after you. Correct. Like if you burned a Quran, the Muslims would make sure
Right.
you didn't see very many more days.
Right.
That's not what Christians are doing.
Right. Yeah. Christians know that, one, we know that's evil. But we also we have a lightness about that because we're like, well, the word of the Lord is enduring. Nice try. We know we're not holding it up. Right.
Right.
In Islam, we've got to hold this thing up. Right?
Yeah.
We know that God's going to bring that. So you mentioned hard and soft power, kind of like right-handed power and left-handed power. So right-handed power is you're a general in the army. When you tell people to go, they go. When you tell people to come, they come. You're a father in the home. Well, you have this authority. When you tell kids it's time to go to bed, this is right-handed power. Left-handed power has something of the priest in it. Left-handed power has something of the angels in it. Left-handed power is where you see something wrong in your organization, maybe one of your employees or a kid, one of your students, or your nation, whatever it might be, and you go, it's kind of like Jesus when Jesus says, I have more things to tell you that you're not ready to hear yet. Okay? When you become someone who actually has leadership and is shaping things, you'll be able to read that, and you go, so I'm going to pray, God, would you take care of that particular thing that needs to be taken care of? And you come back the next day and all of a sudden, boop, it's gone. That's a left-handed power thing. And we definitely need to use both of those. Wisdom dictates when it's right-handed, when it's left-handed.
Understanding that there's not just the physical world. There's also entities moving that we cannot see.
Yeah.
And also, I think it could be extended to when is it correct for Christians to say to their government, no more. This is we're done. You're not allowed to do this to us anymore.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, we crossed that bridge centuries ago.
Yeah, I feel like the founding fathers would have said that many years ago.
Yes, that's just good government and American the American model. So that should be said all of the time. And you're going to have to say that to both parties. You're going to say that to the Republicans and the Democrats in different ways on different items. But yes, all Christians need to be engaged in that way, both speaking about these things, ordering their affairs, and of course voting in the voting booth to send the signal practically of where we stand on these things.
Right. And also, I think related to that, looming large on many people's horizon right now is the topic of illegal immigrants. Obviously, we're in favor of immigration, legal immigration, but as far as illegal immigrants, what should our response be?
Yeah, well, even legal and illegal. When it comes to legal, I don't know all of the intricacies of our immigration policy, but I can guarantee it's not good.
Yes,
okay?
There's much to be improved on.
Even when it comes to what's legal, we need a full Christian, robust legal push on what does it actually mean. Like, what's required if you're going to be a legal immigrant? Like, what's that really going to be about? And how many can we actually handle? So just basic Christian assumptions here. If you're going to be bringing some impoverished person into your community, do you have the resources to actually bless this person, right? Or are you going to bring 1,000? Are you going to bring 2,000? How many are you going to bring? And you have to acknowledge that there are limits on that. You are a limited person. You are a finite human being. You are not God, and therefore you may want to help people that you simply can't help. You have to have that particular category. And then you're going to have to be helping certain types of people, right? There's certain people that are in a condition that you're simply not going to be able to help. So all of that has to be done. We have a huge problem with immigration. If you're an illegal immigrant, well, then you need to leave the country. That's simply
Plain and simple.
yeah. But this is a plain and simple deal. And you can get into how you're going to do it. Well, we have all sorts. We can game out the maneuvers for doing so down the line. But if you're an illegal immigrant, that means that you're not permitted to be in this jurisdiction, and you're going to have to go back to where you do have legal status.
And should citizens enforce that? Like if in the case of Springfield, Ohio, the police are not enforcing that. Is it citizens' job at this point to, you need to go back?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And this gets into like the question of militias and whatnot. We obviously have the Romans 13. We need to show honor. We need to submit to lawful authorities.
Right.
And we're at a place where we know those lawful authorities are in really bad shape. But it's similar to what, not identical, but similar to what I would say to a son who goes, well, how do I honor a father that's not being honorable? Okay. Well, anytime you're in that situation, it's a difficult situation. But you speak to the son and you say, you've got to trust the Lord and honor them. That doesn't mean you do absolutely everything they say. No. But you trying to say, well, I'll be the dad. No, that doesn't work because you categorically have a father.
Right.
So you still categorically have these corrupt civil leaders that aren't doing their job, and you need to petition them. You need to be vocal about what's going on. You need to write. You need to actually do it by faith. Don't we're not at the point of a revolution in which we should topple those particular particularly city, county, state authorities. No, my answer is no. Don't go that way. That I think that kind of move at this time is unbelief. Don't go that way. But yes, I am sympathetic to all of the things that you're saying. I know they're not enforcing it, but you're going to have to actually pursue that by trusting the Lord and by taking the legal measures that are in place. And this is where I want the guys that are disenfranchised conservatives. The key is do better. And this has been our message about the Jewish issue. So you ever said about the Jews, do you know how many of them that are leftists? Yep. Do you know how much influence they have in our society? Yep. Okay. So do better. And people don't seem to like that message as much. Won't you do better? Like, get it through. You build your culture. You build your society. You build your people on the truth and trust the Lord. Everything we were saying before, Augustine says, if you honor the Lord, there's actually going to be dominion growth that happens. Okay. So do that. Trust the Lord and build that society, build that culture, build those laws. You do have to find a foothold. So if you're in a place, if you're in a place that's entirely debauched, if you're in California, you need to know it's not going to turn around fast. I'm not saying every Christian should leave California and find a place to get a foothold. Maybe the Lord's called you to stay there if he has, blessings on your
mission
work. But you Christians should be asking the question, am I living within a context that could actually see a problem like the immigration problem be fixed? Right? Yeah. I mean, we live here in Moscow, Idaho, and it's not a big problem here. It's just not. So we have a foothold, right? There are policies in place for outcasts of society that are menaces to society. Here, still, there's a place for they don't stay here, right? And there's lots of places like that within the nation. So you're going to have to know your particular area, and you have to say, is this really a place where we're going to be able to see that kind of fruition? Probably the best thing you could do if you live in one of those places that are debauched is just leave. It's like an Ichabod situation. The glory's departed, and we're in this crazy moment where we're going to have to move our family to a place with a context where we can actually get something done. And this is where our rugged individualism messes us up, because the American mind is, I, as this rugged individual, I will personally go and handcuff all of the illegal immigrants and remove them from our land. First of all, no, you won't. Okay. First of all, no, you won't. Second of all, once you have a family, you realize how much your context matters, right? Who are your kids going to marry, right? what kind of laws are they going to be facing? What kind of restraints are they going to be facing civilly? So when you're thinking in that corporate, my context very much shapes who I am, and then you got to game out whether you should be where you're at.
Yeah. As we kind of, I'll ask one more question, which is you recently wrote about how to survive a coup. Do you think we're headed in that direction? And if so, what are your tips and tricks?
Yeah, the coup thing is interesting, right? Because you have, I was preaching on the Old Testament story of Athaliah. If you look at the southern kings of Judah, the promise from God is that they will be sons of David. Okay, and they are sons of David all the way down, from David all the way to the very last king.
Right.
That's carried off to Babylon. Every one of them are sons of David except for one spot. It's Athaliah. Right? Athaliah was married to a son of David, Jehoram, and she gave birth to a son of David. Okay, her son Ahaziah. But when Ahaziah dies, her son, she slaughters all of her own grandsons who would have been sons of David, and she takes the throne. Right. So this is a classic coup. Someone who has no lawful right to the throne, taking it. That's the kind of thing you have. When you translate that to the American system, you go, boy, we have all sorts of corruption, and coups aren't always that clean. Like there's a clean coup where you have no lawful right to the throne, and you've just taken it. You're seizing power.
Like if I walked up to the White House.
Yeah.
Right.
If you walk up to the White House, I'm the president now. Well, we would all know Jackson's in trouble, and this is a coup. But you're dealing with shady characters doing shady things, and the lack of all trust. Like people don't trust the media, nor should they trust the media. And we're in this place where people don't know what to trust anymore. And I want to lean into the idea of covenants with God. Interestingly, after when they overthrow Athaliah, so they go and they kill her, and when they do, Jehoiada the priest takes the one grandson, the one son of David that they had hidden in the temple for 7 years, and they set him up as the rightful king, and he is the rightful king, and they make a covenant with God, between God and the king, and between the king and the people. So
right.
God and the king and the people are
the
now
correct way.
The correct way. They actually have a standard by which they can determine who is the lawful authority, and it's not merely human standards, right?
Right.
There's actually a definition of what you need to be if you're going to be a ruler. And I would say until we get that, we're all playing blind chess. Like we're all blindfolded trying to play chess until you come back to what does Romans 13 mean and what is the duty of a civil authority. Now, the Westminster Confession of Faith has you have the English version and you have an American version. The American version edited the section on the civil magistrate, but even in the American version, it says the civil magistrate has the duty of protecting the church. That's a truth that the vast majority of Christians in America have no idea about. I didn't know that was part of the job description, right? And I want to say an ideal is, well, this is what God has revealed to us. Romans 13 says that they are his ministers, right? And this is a part of their job description. And until you get that back into the minds of the people, that this is actually a part of what your job is, and are you in agreement to do the job? If you're not in agreement to do the job, then you can't do the job. You have to be in agreement to do the job. We at least now have a standard by which we can say if someone says, I don't want to do that job at all. But so starting to answer this question of lawful authority and where does authority come from? Well, God makes the king, and he does so by the people. Okay? If you go back to Samuel Rutherford and Lex Rex, this is a clear truth. God makes the king, and he makes the king by the people. And he'll use David. David was anointed by God, but then enthroned and established by the people. So there's a clear system. God makes the king by the people. And we're certainly wobbly on that. And I at least would say we're going to be more and more wobbly on that and more prone to a full-fledged coup that everybody knows about and civil unrest if we don't go back to that particular truth. If we don't go back to there is a triune God who is over the nation. If he's not over the nation in our thinking, then you absolutely expect the kind of corruption that we already have and the kind and more of it that we're headed to.
Yeah, and that's done by letting people know that exists and also bringing them back into the knowledge of God in order that they would understand this is something that needs to happen. Right.
Absolutely. This is a time for Christians to be leaning into the Christian nationalism conversation. Now, whether that term is going to stay around or if a bunch of racist people are going to take it over, that's a debate.
Time will tell.
That's a debate about a term.
Right.
But the principle that Jesus Christ is indeed King of Kings, and so you're going to have to be with him. Yeah, you're going to have to acknowledge him as king. I'm talking about civil kings, civil authorities. You're basically going to have to acknowledge that we indeed are one nation under God, and this God has revealed to us how we should live. He's revealed to us a great deal about what our laws should look like, and we're going to have to pay attention to his revelation. You must do that as a civil authority. Right. Christians, we're in a solid decade of having to exercise some of that virtue, that fortitude, that right-placed stoicism, that resolve. That's not going to be an easy message to communicate. There are going to be people that hate that message because it's got teeth. It's got. We're saying yes, and Jesus is not pleased with a Burgerfell, and it has to change. And we have to have rulers and authorities that will acknowledge that kind of thing. That's a message that we're going to have to spread far and wide.
As we wrap up here, what's your best piece of advice you would give to anyone watching?
Oh, best piece of advice. There's many. I'll try to think of something related to what we've been talking about. Is here's one. Do the things that the Lord has called you to do. We live in a crazy media age, and if you be honest with yourself, if you find yourself, male or female, scrolling a lot and doing very little, like actually trying to fix a problem, right, rather than just lament about all the problems we have, then you're in trouble. So the advice is actually fix something, actually do something, okay? And not just trying to find ways to enhance your resume based on all the things that you've already done. No, do something that would be substantial on your resume. Like look around, start a podcast, do it. Look around at some problems in your actual area, in your local area, and fix it, or start to write some blog pieces, or do something that's going to enhance your particular station, rather than being overwhelmed by, say, the mass problem of what seems to be happening to our nation.
And God never gives us unsolvable problems, which is really nice. So
there you go.
Where can people find you online?
So I write at jaredrlongshore.com. I'm on Twitter, Jared Longshore. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a YouTube page. I think it's called Jared Longshore. It might be Jared R. Longshore. And published several books through Canon Press and other places. So you can find me in all those spots.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. See you guys.
Out a little.